Empire of Silence was almost the first novel that I have ever DNF'd. So let's talk about it. So right off the bat, I just want to give a quick heads up that this is just going to be a spoiler full review. I'm not going to do a spoiler free section because I don't know that I can do one for this book. I had a very difficult time getting through this book and following the story. And so I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the story, the pieces that I caught. There's no way that I'm going to be able to do a spoiler free section for this book. So take it at what it is. I almost didn't even make this video. I don't feel that I'm qualified to talk about the story in this book yet because I honestly didn't fully understand it. I put a post out on my YouTube channel asking if I should even do a review of this book, and everybody said, yeah, do it, talk about it. This is your reading journey, and it should be documented. So that's what I'm doing here. I recommend taking this with a massive grain of salt because I don't even know that I fully understand the full context of the story. Boy, I'm gonna need coffee for this one. Jesus Christ. Where to even begin? So Empire of Silence is written in the first person of Hadrian Marlowe, who is like our main character here. He's doing a retelling of his life story and how he became, quote unquote, the Sun Eater. So Hadrian is born into an elite Palatine class on the planet Delos. Hadrian assumes that he's going to be the heir to his house. His father is Archon Alistair Marlowe, and he is the house ruler, and he rules over the planet Delos. The Marlowe family and the planet itself is really rich because they mine uranium. And Hadrian has a brother named Crispin, who is his younger brother, who he soon finds out is actually going to be the heir to the throne. His father has picked Crispin to be the heir to the throne because he's unhappy with the way that Hadrian handles himself. They live in a really cruel and brutal society, not only on Delos, but across the entire universe. There's slavery, there's sexual misconduct. The ruling class has like a heavy hand over the lower class citizens. They have these death arenas called the Colossus, where the ruling class and the nobles go to fight the slaves and kill the slaves for show, basically. And the reason that Hadrian's father doesn't pick him to be the heir is because Hadrian doesn't want to participate in any of this brutality. He's unable to hide his disdain for the way his father treats the citizens. There's this one scene in the book where they're at the Colossus, which is like this big Colosseum, and they're sitting in their own little box. They have like box seats to this Colosseum show where Crispin, Hadrian's brother, is actually fighting in the Colossus. And because Hadrian's father is the ruler of this world, he's expected to make appearances. And so he's making this grand appearance at this Colossus. And Hadrian just wants no part of it, so he just gets up and leaves. He's unwilling to watch and participate in this brutality that's going on just for fun. They're just killing all of these slaves for fun. So I read this book as part of the Library of a Vikings book club on Fable. And in the book club, we were having this ongoing conversation, and it was getting pretty heated, actually. It was a pretty heated debate because a lot of the people in the book club thought Hadrian to be really unlikable and very naive to the situations that were going on around him. And I thought the exact opposite. I thought Hadrian was the only moral one out of the whole group of people. His dad was putting on these shows, killing slaves. His brother was participating in this brutality, being one of the fighters in this Colossus. And Hadrian seemed to be the only one that was just not willing to participate in this nonsense. So in this scene, he gets up and leaves, and he's walking through the city on his own, which is not a good idea because he's like a noble, and he's walking through the city. He's going to have to deal with like street urchins and homeless and whatnot. But he gets up and leaves, and he goes and walks through the streets, and he ends up getting jumped and beat up by this group of guys. And so that just puts a further tick on his record for his father. At this point, his father kind of wants nothing to do with him. The thing is, though, is Hadrian is better in every single way than his brother. There's a scene in the book where him and his brother are sparring and fighting, and Hadrian wins every single time. Hadrian's a better fighter than his brother. And the Palatines are genetically modified, and so they live for thousands of years. They don't get sick with illnesses. They're just perfect people. They look perfect. And so Hadrian is explained to be this really beautiful young man. I think he's 16 at the start of the book. He's a beautiful young man. He is a great fighter. He's really smart. He's basically like the perfect person, except in this world, they look at him as a flawed and lesser person than Crispin because he doesn't participate in, I guess, what they assume is their culture, right? This brutality, this bloody, brutal culture that they have created. So Hadrian, knowing that he is not going to be the heir to his father's house anymore, it's going to be his brother, he actually wants to be a scholiast. And what a scholiast is you can think of it like a scholar. They're really good at learning languages and learning history and different cultures and alien cultures and yada yada yada. They're scholars, basically, is how you can look at them. So Hadrian wants to be a scholiast, and there's a scholiast that he looks up to named Tor Gibson. And Tor Gibson is like a father figure to Hadrian. He's like the father that Alistair never was. Hadrian looks up to this man, he admires him, and Tor Gibson tries his best to help Hadrian as much as he possibly can. So Hadrian learns that his father is actually going to send him to the Chantry, or Chantry, however you pronounce it. The Chantry is the world's religious organization, and this religious organization really has a heavy hand in the world's politics, or the full galaxy's politics, I guess. So Hadrian wants nothing to do with the Chantry because he thinks of them as the bad guy. They're the ones controlling all of this brutality, political persecution, and things like that. So he wants nothing to do with the Chantry. So when Hadrian learns that his father is going to send him off to the Chantry, he tries to devise this plan to leave the world. He's going to leave the world and go to another world. He wants to go off-world and become a scholiast. So him and with the help of Tor Gibson, they try to devise this plan to get Hadrian off-world so he can go train with the scholiasts. Unfortunately for Hadrian, and probably even more unfortunate for Tor Gibson, their plans get exposed. Hadrian's father finds out that they're devising this plan, and he actually punishes Tor Gibson for coming up with this plan. So Tor Gibson takes the full blame of coming up with the plan, and he actually gets publicly tortured. So they have this public torturing session where they torture him, and then when you become a criminal in this world, they take a knife and rip a slash into your nose, and so you have a slit in your nostril, and that's how they determine if you're a good person or a bad person. Like if you have a criminal record, they know by this slash in your nose. So they give Tor Gibson this slash in the nostril, and then they actually send Tor Gibson off-world. And they send him off-world to an unknown planet. The only person that knows where he's at is Hadrian's father, which obviously he's not going to tell Hadrian where Tor Gibson's at. So now Hadrian is stuck with this dilemma where he's lost his father figure in Tor Gibson, and his father is getting ready to send him to the Chantry, and he just has no way out. So this is where Hadrian's mom comes in. So Hadrian's mom actually doesn't live in House Marlow. She lives in, I forgot what they call it, but it's like their vacation home. She lives in like their vacation home somewhere else on planet. So she actually calls for Hadrian to come visit her at the vacation home, or whatever it's called. And she's actually devised a plan to help Hadrian get off-world. So Hadrian's mom has hired this ship crew to take Hadrian off-world and to deliver him to the scholiasts so he can go become a scholiast. So Hadrian boards the ship, and he's getting ready to go, and they're all set to launch. And they launch up out of the atmosphere, and everything's going fine. It's going to take them a long time to get where they're going, right? Because they're traveling through space. Hadrian goes into, I forget what they call it, but it's like cryo sleep, basically, where he just goes to sleep for a long time until they show up where they're going to show up, and then they kind of wake him up, type of thing. And so he goes into this cryo sleep, and all of a sudden, it's like a 35-year time jump. Hadrian wakes up on this unknown planet, and he's naked, laying in a back alley, and he's homeless. He finds out that this crew just abandoned him on this random planet and just dumped him there. So it takes a crazy turn, right? Because now Hadrian went from kind of just defying his father's orders, doesn't want to be in the Chantry, wants to be a scholiast, to all of a sudden he's like on this unknown planet, naked, homeless, and he has no idea what happened. Now, here's where I want to stop and talk about my personal reading struggles with Empire of Silence up to this point. It seems like I'm following the story pretty well at this point. Like, I understand the plot beats, I understand the context and the brutality that's going on in this world, and the power dynamic with Hadrian and his father, and the moral struggles that Hadrian's going through. I understand all that up to this point. The problem is it took me so long to get here. There's so many words in this book that I just didn't understand. I was reading the actual paperback book, and I had to switch to my Kindle because the Kindle has a built-in dictionary on it. That's how much of a struggle it was for me to follow along with some of the words in this book, and the sentence structures and the way that Chris Ruocchio writes this novel is just something that I really wasn't used to. I think the prose in this book are just way more complicated than I'm actually ready for. It was just getting so time consuming looking up word after word and trying to figure out the context of how Christopher Ruocchio is using these words, and the definition of the actual word wasn't always the way that he was using it in the story. And so I was really having a hard time following along. I tried switching to immersion reading, which is like immersion reading is where you read the physical book, but you also listen to the audiobook at the same time. So you have the narration of the audiobook going on in your head while you're reading. And it really helps with the pacing of the story and the cadence and all that kind of stuff. But even then, I was still kind of struggling a little bit because while it wasn't necessarily me reading these complicated words, it was still being narrated by the audiobook. And I still didn't necessarily always know what these words meant. Eventually, as the book went on and on and on, I caught on more and I started understanding the context. Like, the word chantry was completely new to me and I had no idea what it meant. And so when I looked up the definition, it seemed like Christopher Ruocchio wasn't necessarily using it in the way that the definition described it. So I was still kind of confused on like what the context of this chantry was. And then at one point in the story, when Hadrian's father said, "I'm sending you to the chantry," then I kind of understood like, okay, this is like the group of religious people that he's sending him to. Like, it made sense to me then. But up until then, it was kind of like a struggle to like understand what was going on. And also on top of it, this is a sci-fi book, but it has a lot of fantasy elements. I was also having a hard time understanding like what words were real and what words Christopher Ruocchio was just making up. Because I had never heard of a lot of the real words before, but then there was like fantasy words thrown in as well. Like the one of the alien races is called the Cielcin, and I'm like, is a Cielcin a real thing? Like, is that a real word? And I had to look it up, and it's like having to stop and look things up and start again and stop and look things up and start again. It just threw off the pacing of the story to me, and I had a really hard time keeping track and following along. So at this point, I actually almost DNF'd the book. After I almost DNF'd it, I made a Reddit post about my struggles, and I kind of got some feedback from a bunch of Redditors commenting saying, hey, yeah, I kind of had these struggles too. I had to look up a lot of words, and it's worth it if you just get through it. It's going to be a learning experience for you. If you're able to get through it, it's going to be, it's going to build that muscle and be a lot easier to read these types of books going forward. And also, Christopher Ruocchio's wife actually chimed in and posted to me saying, hey, Christopher Ruocchio wrote these prose in a complicated way on purpose because that's the type of person Hadrian is. Hadrian aspires to be a scholiast, and so he uses all of these big words because that's kind of how a scholiast would talk. And he's a bit melodramatic as well. Hadrian is I say a bit, but Hadrian is like a lot melodramatic. And so Christopher Ruocchio's writing is also very melodramatic to portray that in the story. And so she gave me the encouragement to keep going if I wanted to keep going, but also she gave me the okay to kind of DNF it if I needed to DNF it and come back later or whatever. So that actually gave me the encouragement to keep going and push through and learn how to read these types of books. That way I can read them easier going forward into the future. So at this point, I decided to keep on it and keep doing it and go through and finish it. So now I'm starting to catch on. I'm about halfway through the book. The prose have become a little bit easier for me to read. I'm finally understanding what a lot of these words mean. And it's getting to the point where I'm not having to stop every 5 seconds and look up a new word. I kind of understand the context and everything that's going on now. And I'm kind of getting in the groove. I'm still using the help of the audiobook, doing some immersion reading, but I'm also doing some like standard reading on my own without the audiobook, just trying to build that reading muscle. And this is where I run into the actual problem with the book, in my opinion. The biggest problem that this book has is that the plot goes everywhere and nowhere all at the same time. And what I mean by that is like, it kind of starts like after Hadrian goes off world and gets dumped onto this planet called Imesh. He's homeless and he's naked in the street and he's just wandering down this back alley. Well, right away, he meets this other homeless woman named Kat. The world of Imesh has two moons. The way that it's described is it has two moons, so the gravity is a lot heavier on Imesh. And so when the tides come in, they basically flood the city, and the city's made of a bunch of just canals. So if you're caught in the streets of Imesh during high tide, you're going to get washed away and drowned, especially if you don't know how to swim. So Kat's up in this building and she calls down to Hadrian telling him to get out of the street before the flood comes or else he's going to die. So Hadrian crawls up to her and they built this relationship. And Kat seems like a really cool character. I'm like really excited to start learning more about Kat and like Hadrian's relationship with Kat, and then she just dies. It's a very short-lived thing. She dies before I have enough time to like really build a connection to her. And so when she dies, I'm kind of just like, oh, well, whatever. Like that was short-lived. On to the next one, I guess. So after Kat dies, Hadrian comes up with this plan to join the Colossus. I guess every world has a Colossus. It's not just Delos that has the Colossus. There's one on Imesh. And so he decides to join the Colossus because he is a good fighter. His moral values kind of just led him to not want to be a fighter. But he decides to come up with his plan to join the Colossus to earn enough money to buy a ship to get off world. His goal is still to get off world and travel the stars. So he joins this Colossus and he meets a group of friends that are fellow fighters in the Colossus. And they devise a plan to pitch in all of their money that they've earned from the Colossus to purchase the starship. So the Colossus thing is short-lived because the ruler of this world finds out that Hadrian's bloodline comes from the Palatines in Delos. And so he finds out that he's a noble. He has noble blood. And so the ruler of this world imprisons him and makes him become his slave, basically, and forces him to teach his kids like different languages. Obviously, Hadrian wants to be a scholiast, and so he knows all of these different languages, including like the alien Celsian languages and whatnot that like nobody knows. So this ruler forces Hadrian to teach his kids, and he's basically a servant to the ruler now. So while he's doing this indentured servitude to this ruler on Imesh, he meets another love interest called Valka, and they start building a relationship. And their relationship is kind of lasts through the end of the story. But it was just like so much happened, but also nothing happened because Christopher Ruocchio doesn't give enough time for any of these plot points to develop enough for you to care about them. It's like, you're going to be an heir to the throne. Oh, no, you're not. You're actually going to go to the Chantry. Oh, no, you're not. You're going to go be a scholiast. Actually, you're not going to be a scholiast because you got dumped on this new world. Oh, you have a love interest. Her name's Kat. Oh, but she died, so now you're going to go be a gladiator. Oh, but the gladiator thing is short-lived because you just got indentured servitude to this new ruler on this planet. And while you're in the indentured servitude, you met this new love interest. And it's like, now Kat doesn't even matter. She just died and now you're on to the next one. And it's none of this stuff matters to me at all because you never spend enough time with it for it to develop and for you to build a relationship with it and for you to care about it. It just all happens so quickly. It's like one thing to the next thing to the next thing, and none of it matters. And then on top of that, there's like other little things thrown in that I didn't even mention. Like they go explore these ancient ruins and find out that there's this ancient alien race that built these ruins a long time ago before the human race ever existed. And then they have these interactions with the Cielsen at the very end of the book. You see how the war with the Cielsen is maybe kind of starting to develop. All of the individual plot points were just going nowhere. They just didn't have enough time to develop. I got so tired of that. By the end, I just wanted the book to be finished. For the last like 150 pages, I just threw on some headphones and threw on the audiobook and like cleaned my house, and I was doing chores and stuff while the audiobook was playing in my head. I don't retain information very well doing it that way. And so since then I've kind of watched some reviews and see what like other people's thoughts were and how they liked the book and how they followed along with the prose. Everybody says that the last 100 to 200 pages are where like the plot really starts picking up and you get all of the intricacies with the Cielsen and how they're going to get off world and all of this stuff, and it all comes together. But by then, like I was zoned out. Like I just put the audiobook in and I was cleaning house and I was just kind of not paying attention, and I didn't retain any of that information during the ending of the book. So I missed out on like, I guess, all the good parts of this book. Eventually, I will go back and do a reread of this once I get some more literature under my belt and get more comfortable reading this style of prose. But as it stands right now, I wasn't a huge fan of the way that the story went. I really loved the beginning of the book, and I was intrigued by the like power struggle and moral struggles that Hadrian was going through at the beginning of the book with his father and with his brother, and eventually being able to escape and get off world. But once he got onto a mesh, the story kind of fell apart for me. I honestly, like at that point, I should have DNF'd it, but by then I kind of had already committed myself to finishing it. And so I just threw the headphones in and got through it with the audiobook. So to wrap up this video, I'm actually, even though I finished the book, I'm actually going to consider this a DNF. And not even necessarily a DNF, but maybe just a like, I'll come back to you later type of thing, because I don't think I really gave this book the justice that it deserves with my reading struggles in the beginning and then losing focus towards the end when the good parts actually came. I think I did this book a complete disservice, reading it too early in my reading journey, possibly. So I'm going to shelf it. It's going up on the shelf, and I'm going to give it some time, maybe a year or two, and then I'm going to come back to it and do a fresh read through of it, hopefully with a more robust vocabulary at that point. So there's going to be no star rating or nothing like that in this video. I did give it a star rating on Fable because I was in the book club, and to wrap up the end of the book club, you have to give it a star rating, and then that way you can post your comments. So I gave it a star rating on Fable, but if you follow me on Fable, I would ignore it. Like I think I gave it a 3.5 or a 4, just because like I don't want to do the book a disservice by giving it a low rating because of my own reading faults. And so I gave it like a 3.5 or a 4 on Fable, but really I'm going to consider this a come back to it later type of deal. So I just want to say thank you to everybody in my YouTube comments on my posts, encouraging me to either DNF it or keep reading it. There was a lot of both of those options in there. I also want to thank everybody on the Reddit post that I made, encouraging me as well and giving me a lot of advice and ways on how I could get through the book and increase my vocabulary using a dictionary and those types of things. All of those comments were really helpful, and obviously a special thank you to Christopher Ruocchio's wife for also giving me that encouragement to get through the book. I will come back to it and I will do its due justice when I'm ready. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me today. Please go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe if you want to do all that shit down below. Peace out, guys.